So I really believe that's where the future lies. That's why this conference is so important, because the only way we're going to reach our collective goals and the only way we're going to secure our energy future is by working together and collaborating, which is exactly what UNICA wanted to do by bringing all of us here for this important conference. Thank you.
Thank you. Please, Mr. Nelson Sam, he's our next panelist, and he will talk about biofuel demand by 2015 and what governments should take into consideration.
A very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I want to thank UNICA for inviting me to represent Thomson Reuters. I look after the advisory business within Point Carbon, which was acquired by Thomson Reuters a year ago. It's over the last one day, you might have heard lots about biofuels. To evoke some of your thinking, I want to draw your attention to the quote where Jeremy Rifkin usually puts forward. He says that we started with Industrial Revolution, and now we have come to a new revolution that is all about energy security, how fast we can communicate energy, and how fast you can access energy. So it's all about energy and communication. And that's where we are here today. And to evoke the discussion even a bit more, even before I start my presentation, I want to share with you the 4 legs which are crucial for any process or any new sort of implementation plan that you would look towards, whether it is biofuels or whether it is renewables or whether it is any sort of energy. One leg is regulatory or public policy. But often when we talk about public policy, we forget about how the fiscal incentives that are revolved around public policy. The second and the third one is, the first is regulatory, and the second, how the fiscal incentives revolve around regulatory processes. The third one is how business and the private sector can make sure that the regulatory processes and the fiscal incentives are appropriate for the businesses to take forward. And the fourth one is, when all these three happen, is it resource efficient? Is it sustainably viable for a local country, a national country, or a local region, or a national region, or as a world at large? If these 4 legs of a table, if I say, if it all comes through, then believe me, public policy would go forward. To start with my first page, the most important driver is demand. We have seen X billion liters will be produced. We have also seen a number of countries moving forward to produce biofuels. Despite controversies, we are seeing a constant demand or constant production that is happening for whether it is ethanol or biodiesel, and people are also talking about different molecules that are going to be produced. So the demand is very important. The second one is supply. I've just taken 2 figures from Global Biofuel Center, and if you look at both of these figures, which shows the capacity to produce is much more than the demand. So we are innovating new technologies. We are moving from first generation to second generation. People are also talking about the third generation. But what is important to see today is, am I able to move my capacity to meet and create that demand so that constantly the capacity is taken care in the market? So typically, what challenges we envisage, even when we look at a policy to be designed? Most of us on the dais here mentioned about energy security and overall net energy gains. And there, on the other side, people are talking about food availability and food security as well. But what is important to see today is, can we sustainably produce a commodity which is market attractive and which is profitable for a country from a GDP growth? If all these 3 come together, then believe me, there is a low carbon economy which can be promoted. So maximizing the investments when the productivity grows to an utmost level where sustainably responsible investments can move forward, in addition to creating long-term infrastructure, which could be education, which could be technology innovation, and which could be public infrastructure as well. So there are challenges when you design a policy. We need to keep in mind all of these aspects. So even as you think about these challenges, there are still opportunities. As I said, this is the third industrial revolution where it's all about energy and communication, how fast you would communicate the energy so that you can minimize the loss. The second aspect is, how can I reduce my emissions? The third aspect is, can all these investments create a market mechanism so that every investment is counteracted with every competitive environment that you can envisage within that investment? Can it create jobs? Can it create new technologies? Can it cultivate practices which can be not limited to a country but can be demonstrated worldwide? Can it be utilized and every abandoned land that is left without usage? Before we take into discussions, I just want for the audience as well as for the dais, members in the dais, I want to leave 3 points. Successful policy intervention can take many forms. It could be incentives around fuels, it could be tax, it could be market-based mechanisms, whatever it may be. But what is important to see is that every investment, is it going to come back with a return so that the country in itself can take it forward without depending on external funding. The third part is, the second one, the use of biofuels should be combined with other low-carbon policy options. So you cannot negate the importance of designing a policy just for biofuels and bioethanol or biodiesel. But you need to see, can I create a low-carbon let's say if it's transport sector, can I create incentives around transport sector which would support my capacity of ethanol and combine it together? Or can I use my, can I create incentives for jet or aeroplanes and aeroplane manufacturers or aeroplane operators to see that they could use the biodiesel or bioethanol for the fuel for purpose. So how you can combine different technology and how you can combine the different incentives around these technologies so that no one is hindered or no one is pushed down, but everyone can participate in the market together. And the third part is agreement between producers and consumers. So there is a demand what consumer wants, and there is an opportunity what the producers are thinking on a long term. How you can combine the producers and consumers together. And that's where you need to start thinking how you would design a public policy. So it is important to see that there is a political commitment, there is an active market. If there is no political commitment, there would not be an active market. And if there is no active market, there would not be any financial investments or compensation that you can decide to bridge the gap between investment as well as opportunities to grow. And finally, who is the end market? Is the market limited for 3 years, or is it a market limited for 5 years, or is it a market that's going to be eternal? I would leave you with that. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to invite Paulo Sotero now, who is going to be our final panelist in these opening remarks. He's going to address the trends that may impact public policies for biofuel development.
Now, in Washington, I host a lot of events like this, but I rarely have a PowerPoint, so I'm all the power you can point to, not me. I'm glad to be here, and I'd like to, from the descriptions we had today, from the presentations, there are clearly, it's one of the trends that I think we see in this business today that was described by Professor Lee, by Governor Culver, by Nelson, which is, and I think very wisely, the limits of this described by Sergio Trindade. we see that there are new players, bigger players in this market, that those are players that, as I mentioned this morning in a different panel, those are players that operate normally at a very big scale. Those are the trading companies, and those are the oil companies. They are entering this business, and the reason, I guess, they are entering this business is not because they see a future for it. They see a future that is global for this industry. They see the commoditization of whatever is happening, and I assume they see a lot of money to be made. They see a lot of profits. And this is an important trend. I think this is good news. We see this in Brazil now with trading companies, oil companies joining ethanol companies to produce new ventures, new investments, etc. We just saw Shell and Cosan, and we have others in the making. There is the other trend that I find fascinating, which is what's happening in science and technology in this area. It looks like we have done what we were supposed to do in the initial phase, be it in Iowa or anywhere else in the United States, or here in São Paulo, anywhere else around São Paulo. So we have the two largest. I'm mentioning only those two because they are the two largest producers. So we are now going to this much more sophisticated and, in my view, fascinating area of research and development to produce sugar derivatives or products, byproducts of sugar with a much higher value added. And that's why I believe the oil companies and the trading companies are looking at this. It's not only about producing ethanol from corn or producing ethanol from our sugar cane. It's something that's much more sophisticated, that demands probably much more capital, and this is what probably will drive public policy. Sometimes I look at this, and as a journalist before I covered this sector, and I saw mostly very uncreative policies, sort of, yes, in the United States, the mandates the incentives to produce ethanol from corn, as we had in Brazil, the incentives to produce ethanol from sugarcane. But this phase has led, obviously, to protectionism that may or may not be justified, but it's there. I don't see, for instance, being in the United States, I don't see much room for this to change anytime soon. I don't see that the political climate there is going to change. I don't see, for instance, in a related issue, I don't see much room in Brazil for us to adopt a market economy, a market pricing for gasoline, which certainly would help the sector if we did. I don't see that the government in Brazil, the political institution, can afford that in a moment where we are already facing a problem of inflation. I don't think that this will happen. Therefore, it's not going to changes. Good regulations are not going to good regulatory frameworks are not coming from what we have. It's probably going to come from what we are going to have. For instance, we see there our visitor, Professor Li from China, talking about sweet sorghum, which is, one more fascinating possibility for